was to report at Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, on June 30, 1999. Along with a bunch of youthful men and women, I arrived punctually. Our military training instructor put us into groups called flights after a quite tense encounter. We were each assigned to a barracks, which would serve as our home during basic training. We were given a timetable and some ground rules by the TI. As far as I'm concerned, Conversion Day was July 1, 1999. We dedicated the entire day to transitioning from civilian life to military training, including our identities, possessions, and attitudes. As a result, everyone had to learn to march as the main mode of transportation, get buzz cuts, new attire, immunizations, medical screenings, dog tags, and a whole lot more. Summers in upstate New York were much milder than in Texas, where I was born and raised. Unbeknownst to me, my body was unprepared to endure a full day of marching in the scorching July heat of Texas. After hours of marching, I started to feel sick. There were 400 individuals waiting to get inoculated at the medical facility when our squadron arrived. Our turn had come to form a line and receive our injections. I was told to stand on the red circle and not move until the person in front of me stepped forward. I was in the middle of it all, and my health was rapidly declining, and my heart was beating. Right in front of me, someone drew back. He shifted to the right side while the injections were given. I was next in line as he bled profusely from his arm. I lined up in the center of 400 people, motionless as a statue, got my shots, and was then escorted back into formation. I let out a scream of anguish, but the TI instructed me to remain silent. Anxiety was causing me to black out. By the time I hit the concrete with my head and left side, it was too late. The lights had gone out. According to what I was told later on, the collision was audible to everyone, and they all watched as my head slammed back onto the concrete floor, hitting my face and nose. Some people started shouting, "It seems like he's not breathing. I'm afraid he's dead." As soon as the TI told everyone to sit down, the medical personnel sprang into action to help me. The room was filled with an unsettling quiet as all 400 individuals sat in a state of terrified harmony. As my body emptied itself and died, my other trainees observed in silence. I learned afterwards that the medical team had used all possible methods of resuscitating me, but to no avail. Even though doctors thought my neck was fractured, they still had to figure out how to brace it. Stabilization measures had to be made while the ambulance was on its way. My fellow recently recruited trainees thought my doom was near after they witnessed a person's death. It was unique for me because I had the most incredible experience and never lost awareness. After getting my vaccines, I rejoined the formation. I could only make out the light from a little circle ahead of me as my vision began to fade. As the circle shrank in size, I felt a comforting embrace. Finally, I looked up in an effort to keep from passing out, but that just made things worse, and I knew there was nothing I could do, despite my unconsciousness. I mustered all the courage to shield my face in one final attempt. I cocked my head to the right as I plummeted. I was taken aback by the fact that I experienced no pain despite hearing the most intense blast and subsequent ringing sound. As I listened to that piercing noise, I realized I was in total darkness. The sound was reminiscent of plucking and letting vibrate a thick cello string. In the very next second, I perceived the chord snap, and the melody went from a lovely harmonic to a twang, and then dead quiet. I believed I had been cut off from that body, my lifeline, and that I had died. There was complete blackness. I was getting antsy because, if I were dead, what would I do? Neither the destination nor the way there were clear to me. I persisted in my waiting, and as if I were adjusting the focus of a camera or telescope, a scene gradually came into focus in front of me. Instead of seeing a corpse, I saw a dense blanket of fog when I looked down. "Like you," could sense it. I stood outside at some point throughout the night and glanced up at the sky. The light looked like a harvest moon, just right for seeing landscapes and animals, but I still didn't know what was causing it. The light seemed comforting and welcoming, as if it were a field of warm, electric emotions that enveloped me entirely. Looking around, I could make out a herd of horses, and it looked like I was on a ranch with undulating hills and valleys. Wow, what a fantastic dream! I thought to myself. Never before has a dream seemed so real to me. I remained my ground as one horse started to dart around before abruptly turning and charging at me on a crash course. It veered to the right just as I was about to make a turn. The swift wind slapped me in the face and waved its tail in my direction, caressing my right arm and cheek. Being a bit mischievous, he knew who I was. "Wow, that was so real," I exclaimed. This confirmed my survival, and then a flood of knowledge and insight overwhelmed me. My life's mission and the most astounding universal truths seemed to have just been downloaded. I was relieved to be back home because this is my home. Behind me, I sensed the approach of an additional figure. We started to connect emotionally, or through telepathy, since she seemed familiar to me. We were glad to see each other, but she made it clear that I shouldn't have been home at that hour. I must attend to a matter of paramount importance upon my return to Earth. There are no words to describe the immense affection that enveloped and nourished me. It was unbelievable. I started to tilt my head to meet her left gaze. Her presence was radiant, ethereal, and brilliance. "No, you can't look at me, and you must go back to your vessel on Earth." After complying, I looked down and saw that we were higher up than the farms and trees around us. In the far lower field, I noticed a barn, so I zeroed in on that. The tree line, illuminated by a kaleidoscope of deep pinks and purples, loomed over the barn as I turned my gaze upwards. As I swung around to face straight ahead once more, my eyes followed that line of trees. The sky was just breathtaking as I gazed upwards. Stars in stunning purple aurora patterns were everywhere. It hit me when I took in the scenery how far away from Earth I really was. The energy of the people within those life vessels was the source of all those lights in the sky. In addition to illuminating the scenery, the combined light cast a warm, affectionate glow over everything. The energy returns to its source, undergoes a reconciliation process, and then has the option to enter another living vessel, as she informed me, when their current one dies. One of the lights stood out from the others as quite bright, so I zeroed down on it. I began to float upwards into the sky. As I accelerated and became more luminescent, my field of view became increasingly blurry. Shortly after that, I transformed into a flash of brilliant light, and then, bang, I was within the light tunnel. As soon as my eyes refocused on Earth, I emitted a sigh of immense pleasure, causing blood to spew across the floor. Upon realizing I had returned, the medical team and TI started bombarding me with questions in an effort to rouse me from my slumber. My thoughts raced back to my childhood home as I listened to the questions. Returning there was my first priority. However, I understood that I needed to remain patient in order to return home. In order to examine my teeth and mouth, I used my tongue. I was surprised that I kept them. As they loaded me into the ambulance and drove me to the hospital, informed them that I had returned to Earth and started answering their questions. Tears welled up in my eyes as I lay there, not from agony, but from the profound truths and magnificent experience that lingered in my mind. Remained fully conscious the whole time and remembered every detail. I wish I could tell you all I know, but the reason we are here is to learn, so please, I will have to disappoint you. Later on, I will divulge something that piques my curiosity, and people will find out about it nonetheless. July 1, 1999 was the day of my rebirth. Someone else was here when I was born. Over time, I transformed from someone who was anxious, arrogant, disrespectful, and impatient into someone who is patient, kind, understanding, level-headed, and composed. Aside from the fact that we are the gods, I've realized that life is long. We did not create the universe, and we are unable to accomplish the marvels described in the Bible. Creating a civilization that can fully observe the cosmos is our responsibility. The only thing stopping us from realizing our full potential is anything that limits our abilities. The scientific community ought to work toward an observation efficiency parity with energy usage. Math, experimentation, observation, and human effort have led to the discovery of numerous beautiful laws of nature. Those endeavors have laid the groundwork for our ongoing search for the physical rules that govern our cosmos. It's about time we figure out what we're here to do as a species, codify the first law of observation, and uncover the universal laws that govern our behavior. Seem to have kept a more thorough grasp of general relativity and can carry out complicated thought experiments with ease. Even if it sounds strange, this is the method I use most often to get to sleep. As I lay in bed with my wife next to me just before I want to go to sleep, I've realized that this is the ideal time to do thought experiments. No matter where I go in the cosmos, I will never be in danger. I feel purified and have lost my dread of dying. I cringe whenever I see individuals fighting or injuring one another. Coming home and seeing the victim's grief and suffering all over again is going to be incredibly tough for them. Oh my goodness, believe me when I say it isn't worth it. Living things allow us to feel the stresses that physical matter is going through. We return to our home to live a life free of tension when our vessel dies. Love is born in this way. Particle creation and retention in our cosmos depend on stress. This is what we see as material stuff. There is no impact on our knowledge of physics from this. I'll throw you a hint. When the circumstances are just right, physical substance can form when elementary particles are subjected to a strong enough stress field. They will continue to exist in our cosmos so long as the circumstances of the stress field are constant. Everything visible in the universe began with subatomic particles, which evolved into atoms, molecules, stars, and everything in between if those simple particles stayed in the stress field long enough. Direct observation is possible for all objects within the stress field, whereas indirect observation is possible for all objects outside the stress area. Within a stress field, we occupy living vessels and conduct indirect and direct observations. Once we get home, we will apply what we have learned. Learning to love while under stress is another goal. After that, we go back to our house, where stress has no effect on our feelings. Do good deeds for yourself and others, and when your physical body dies, you will feel the effects on all living things that you brought into this world. From their perspective, you can tell that you were concerned about them and what they went through. You should know that the process of reconciliation is dreadful if you inflict grief and suffering on other people or yourself. The most effective actions are those that are characterized by love and kindness. Lastly, make sure you travel, eat a hearty diet full of fruits and vegetables, exercise and stretch on a regular basis, cultivate meaningful relationships, pursue hobbies, dance, play, work, learn, and take in as much cosmic light as you can. I trust in you, and I want you to know it. That concludes our experience for the day. Leave a comment with your thoughts as usual. Take care until we meet again, and may blessings be upon you. There are 4 sections to my account of the event.